So I decided to do this video about my move from Chicago to Florida. I moved here about 5 years ago. I live in South Florida in the city of Boca Raton. And many of my friends in Chicago asked me, Alex, 5 years later, was it a good move? So I decided to do this video kind of to go over this. Right now I'm working here in, it's December, and it's about 75-degree weather in Florida versus probably like, I would say probably somewhere in the 30s or 20s in Chicago. And it's kind of my number one reason for moving. I would say probably was the weather. I'm kind of warm weather kind of guy. I like to be, t-shirt, shirts. I have kids. It took us like half an hour just to bundle them up and take them out. And also the fact that you felt like a prisoner. In Chicago you felt like, for 6 months, let's say November through probably May, you'll be stuck in the house. It takes boots, coat, gloves, scarf, hat, all that stuff. Multiply it times 4, me and the 5 actually, me and the kids, and it takes like half an hour to leave the house. It's gray everywhere compared to this beautiful blue sun, as you can see behind me. Everything is green, so it's kind of like an amazing place to live. We have right now many snowbirds are coming to visit us, so I meet them here on the street in the coffee shops. And they're like, hey, how do I move here? I feel very fortunate to live here. We're the number one reason. I feel like in 8 months out of the year, I live in paradise. Yeah, it gets a little hot here, probably in July, August, September. But again, I like hot. I don't mind hot. You sit in the pool, sit by the pool, you go to the ocean. A friend of mine, when I was kind of moving down here, he kind of asked me like, hey, where are you gonna be? I said, okay, is it gonna be hot? How am I gonna do it? So he said, listen, Alex, where do you spend most of your day? Let's say most of your working day. Say in the office. So he said, is your office air conditioned? I said, yes. So he said, well, it's gonna be the same thing in Florida. He was right. I did not regret it. So I do, yeah, it gets hot here. I'm not gonna lie to you, July, August, September. When you have a pool, when you have air-conditioned house, office, it's fine. All those stories about mosquitoes, gators, it's nonsense, okay? Mosquitoes, yeah, we have here and there, we have mosquitoes, especially on sunset, but it's not a big problem, okay? So weather, reason number one. Reason number two, I think for me at least, I feel like in the big cities, especially up north, like, Chicago, New York, Boston, LA, people are kind of like very unfriendly, a little closed-minded, kind of like zombie-like state. They don't create eye contact. They're always kind of like in their phones. In the small cities here where I live, where it's Delray Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, people, start conversations with you. It's just much easier to communicate with people. People hold the doors for you, when you come and go, and you kind of reciprocate being kind of with this just kindness. Just people are, in my opinion, maybe some will not agree with me. I think people are just friendlier, nicer, happier here. People still smile all the time. Joke, laugh. It's a lot easier. This kind of fits my personality. Maybe for some people it's not important. For me, it was an important factor. So reason number two for me to move down here was just, different type of people. More friendly, more open. I think the sun really does this to people. Like when you have the sun, just people are just more open, more optimistic, more energetic also. I felt always very sleepy kind of in Chicago, and especially in the winter months when there's no sun for days at a time. To me, sun is very important. Reason number three, I think when I go to Chicago probably every 2 months for work, every 6 weeks, 2 months, just a lot of like crazy traffic. I'm not saying Florida doesn't have traffic, okay? Go to Miami, it's awful, terrible traffic. But again, we're talking about smaller cities around Miami, so I'm like hour and a half, probably not an hour and 10 minutes in traffic from Miami. Way less traffic. Yeah, right now we have like the snowbirds come down here. We do have more traffic, but it's always like about an hour, each time, maybe like 8 to 9, and then like 4:30 to 6. That's your traffic. It kind of like slowly dies down, and and it's not like a major thing for me. Reason number four for me, just how small everything feels. Small in terms of like everything I need is within literally 10-minute drive. Whether it's my dry cleaning, my doctors, my kids' kindergarten. Hey, how are you doing, guys? Hi. Just everything is within 15-minute drive. Everything is nearby. Just speaking of friendly, just my friends pass by. Just people walk here and just say hello to you. Friends, acquaintances. This never happened in Chicago. I'm sorry. Just people say you can wave and smile at you. So Yeah, so we're a 15-minute city. We're like literally maybe 10-minute city. Everything I need is within 10-minute drive. It's an incredible difference in sort of how you live. Reason number 5, I think I'm up to 5, right? Another thing is people are very chilled out here. Like, people like used to, talk about politics, this, left, right, Trump this, Biden this. Here, people just enjoying life. Nobody really gives a shit about politics here. Yeah, when it comes to vote, people vote. But when I lived in Chicago, this is it, this is, all that stuff, all this none. People get really agitated, start arguing about it, being unhappy about it. You see signs everywhere, vote this, vote that, I don't care left or right, as long as you're a good human being. I don't care if you're pink, blue, purple. I like you and I respect you. And if you're an asshole, it doesn't matter who you are, you're not my kind of guy. And finally, I would say, just it feels a little bit freer here, like a little less regulations, If you want to open a business, you get it done within, 2 minutes here online. If you want to get a driver's license in Chicago, just going to DMV, it was like a half a day trip. Here, it's literally like you're in and out, you make an appointment, you're out in like maybe 15, 20 minutes. Just everything kind of like, you feel like the government works for you really, Yeah, I pay real estate taxes and they're about the same, maybe lower as in Chicago, but about the same or lower, but they're not raising them every 3 years the way they were raising them. In Chicago, they would raise every 2 or 3 years. My taxes would like raise, 10, 20%, which is crazy. Here they kind of like, they are what they are. They usually, I think the percentage of your purchase price, about 1.5%, maybe 1.75% of your purchase price. And that's it, they kind of stay there, okay? So all in all, I would say Chicago, the only thing I miss probably is just my friends, some of my friends, good acquaintances, and that's about it. So all in all for me, I really say it was a good move for me. So let's talk about the cons, okay? Why you shouldn't move to Florida. Let's put my kind of other hat. If you don't like the heat, if you don't like the warm, you want to change of seasons, whatever, and some of my friends like, I would never move to Florida. I need my change of seasons. Cool. Actually, my brother is kind of the same way. I respect that, and if you need a change of seasons, don't blame me. It's beautiful. I love the leaves turning yellow and red and a little bit of snow, to be quite honest, maybe like a week, but that's about it. Reason number 2, your family or your job is really holding you there and you really need to stay there. I get it. I respect it. We all got things, commitments, life commitments, so you probably need to stay there. So reason number 3 to not to move to Florida is probably, I would say, I would say anything like humidity bothers you, kind of go back to weather. Mosquitoes, again, I don't think it's a big issue, but if you're like tremendously bothered by this, I would say probably, a few times a year it comes up, but overall they kind of fumigate. It comes up in the summer when it rains a lot, it becomes humid, and then you get kind of mosquitoes come out in droves. Where we live, so if you live like in New York or Chicago and you absolutely must go to the opera or must go to a museum like every week, you're probably going to miss the culture here. We don't have a lot of that here. I think you can go to Miami. I'm sure you can find it there. But, it's absolutely a must. I think like a cultural, life is probably a lower quality. And another reason, actually, that's an important one. I would say many people I have my own business, so I kind of like, I'm self-employed. But people who are hoping to find like, jobs in big industries, like banking jobs or insurance or, some industry or like engineering, manufacturing, like, software. We don't really have big businesses here. For the most part, it's like tourism, finance, real estate, hospitality. That's about it. So many of them pay kind of like not really high wages, and life is not cheap here. Let's put it this way. When the average home, in my area costs probably $800 to $1 million. Your taxes are 1.5% of that. Add on health insurance, add on top of that, your homeowner's insurance, which is quite high here. Maybe add the HOA, and it could get expensive here. And I see some people, especially people in fixed incomes, people like seniors, complaining about how much more expensive it's gotten. And I don't blame them. Yes, it could get expensive here. But again, my expenses are about the same what they were in Chicago, maybe a tiny bit lower. But I think the quality of life is higher. So like when you think of kind of denominator, right, the fraction, right, a quality of life for the price that I pay, in my opinion, a person who values weather, a person who values people around him, like friendly people around him, safety, cleanliness, ocean, I think that's like the value here for me, that you know, the ratio of quality of life for the price that it costs to live here. I think definitely Florida wins, but listen, it's my personal opinion, and that's, you know, I could see maybe some people would disagree with me here. All in all, moving to Florida worked out for us, but I could see how it may not work for some people whose factors are important. You know, those factors I mentioned, maybe some other factors. If I'm forgetting something, or you're agreeing or disagreeing with me, please leave it in the comments, and I'll be happy to see what you have to say. Thanks for listening.